Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to SynthWorld on WSLR LP 96.5 FM and WBPV LP 100.1 Bradenton. I am joined here by legendary synth-pop singer, songwriter, Texas-based artist, one of the best to do it, the one and only Jessie Frye. Jessie Frye, thank you for being here.
Thank you. That's so sweet. Wow. Cool. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. Oh, I think that introduction is well overdue if it hasn't been made
Oh,
already. So yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time, especially after, you're just now coming off of
yeah.
an album release. You've got so much stuff going on. It's doing well in the UK charts.
A new season, but also it feels cleansing at the same time. So it's
Yeah,
surreal. It's surreal.
I'm sure. I mean, that long of a production process, I know it's been at least a few
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
and all of, if you listen to the album at all, you can feel there's so much raw emotion and stuff you've gone through that comes out in this album. So I'm sure there was like you said, a release of some sort of all of that to let go of, and that was
Yeah.
a whole jam to it.
Yes, because I have my own interpretation of the album and my own lived experience of it. But I think once it belongs to other people, it starts to take on a life of its own. And it's like a beautiful separation happens, between the artist and the album. I still feel very obviously like close to it, but I'm not the same woman that wrote those songs anymore.
Sure.
So it's kind of cool to see it all encapsulated in those songs. And, part of me, of course, it's in my nature as an overachiever. I'm already working on the next. There's a lot, like you said, there is a lot of emotion from all different directions packed into Otherworld. So it's pretty surreal to see it out.
Why, why did you decide to make Denton your like home base when you were like really getting your music career going, your arts career going?
Yeah.
Was that like happenstance or like strategic?
Both. And it is if you live here, you want to say Denton, or
Denton,
if you
I get
sound
it.
like if you want to sound like a local, you want to say Denton.
Denton, okay. Don't
And
enunciate too hard.
Denton means you
Yeah,
don't
you
live
can tell I'm a
there.
Yankee from that, right?
No, it was both. It was strategic and it was happenstance, especially at the time that I moved to Denton, which was excuse me, 2010 or 11. I want to say 2010. At that time, there was such an incredibly vibrant music scene in Denton, in Dallas, in Fort Worth, all across what we call the DFW Metroplex. And so at that time, I had only been playing live shows for about a year and a half. So I was like 17, 18 when I first started my career. And you're starting from the ground up at that age and at that time period. You just kind of follow where all of the vibrancy is, in your own city. That's where you have to start. It's where everyone starts. And I think it makes sense that people think I'm from there because so much of my career happened while I lived there, And
Yeah.
Arlington isn't necessarily like that far away. I was born technically in Arlington. Um, so I'm seen as a Denton native, and that's fine. I'm not precious about that. It makes sense. It really is where I cut my teeth as I mean, really, I cut my teeth as a performer all over Texas, but because I lived in Denton, I was so much more part of the local music scene there.
I'm just curious, do you feel like growing up in Texas affected your sound, your music at all?
That's a really interesting question. I do get feedback from people a lot that'll say like there's like this weird country twang to her voice sometimes. And I'm like, "Oh, well, it's probably because I'm born and raised in Texas and I do notice that my accent comes out in my voice sometimes in the way that I say certain words. So maybe like sonically that happens on accident, but I don't want to change that because I think that's kind of me just being me. Um,
Yeah.
I've always wanted to write country music at some point down the line because my father was a really big country music fan, and he was really passionate about the old westerns, and so there's a lot of reverence for me internally about that whole world. But it just keeps getting kind of like pushed on the back burner.
And it's funny you mentioned that, like I didn't notice that at all about your music until I heard some of your earlier work. Till I
Yeah,
think a lot of people like, who get into your music the way I do don't know about
right.
the past, right? I mean, the fact that you've released multiple albums
Yeah.
before this, and that's kind of when I realized, and watching some of the videos and stuff, that's when I picked up.
Oh, you must have gone down a rabbit hole. There's a whole
Yeah,
lifetime,
yeah,
you
oh
know?
yeah. I
There's a
watched
whole
about
lifetime
everything I
before.
could.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
which is okay. Like a lot of people think "Kiss Me in the Rain" is my first record, which is so funny to me because it's so not. But that's I don't want to take that away from them. If that's their introduction to me, then I want them to have that. So
well, I mean, hopefully they're mature enough listeners to not have it whatever else you've made squander that. So, and I mean, I loved a lot of it, and
well, look, you're hearing in my earlier releases, Damon, you're hearing essentially a teenager.
yeah,
You're hearing a 20-year-old girl
yeah,
who
the evolution is amazing. Honestly, like it's just
it's
not what I would have pictured where you are now of coming from. It's so
yeah.
cool.
Is it my favorite stuff I've done? Is it my strongest? No, not if we're going to look at it from that point. But is it integral to me finding where I needed to go? Yeah, of course. I don't play any of that live anymore, and it's not because I'm ashamed of it. It's just, imagine if, I mean, kind of like we do now with social media, but from the get-go, imagine if your entire like family photo albums were available for the world to view.
That'd be hilarious.
You'd probably be like, "Oh, I don't want people to we can skip that photo, or we can that photo was nice while it lasted, but let's maybe that's kind of how I lovingly see my early releases."
I want to take you all the way back to, I've
Okay.
got to imagine sometime when you were a child-ish, where you had some sort of like deep connection, deep moment with music. Would you remember that? And do you remember like why you've been so drawn to singing and songwriting?
Mm. Well, there are several moments. I was just always an outspoken creator, even as a little girl. I just felt like I needed to be heard. That's like it's one of the only ways I can describe it. It's not really like you're a child, so you don't really know like what all this means, but singing feels good, or listening to Madonna makes me feel empowered, or watching Michael Jackson dance makes me feel really, really interested in this whole thing because I'm feeling what they're feeling. I would say like my my most like raw moment with music was probably with The Cure. Yeah, my mom used to she would make these VHS tapes for me with like Madonna, Michael Jackson, The Cure music videos. And I have like very, very strong memories of me playing the Cure tape. It was the music videos, and one was the caterpillar. And I actually thought he was a weird, like strange creature from another planet because he had the lips and the eyes, and you're like 6 years old, you know.
Yeah, it's
You
quite
don't
a weird video to see as a
you
child.
don't really, and you don't, but you also don't judge,
Hmm.
you know. You're
Hmm.
not judging. You're just like in awe of this strange, wonderful being on your screen. And so I would carry around my jukebox around the neighborhood and like set up my jukebox in front of the different houses of my neighbors and like sing and dance Cure songs
Okay, that's awesome.
and just completely weird them out.
Forcing it on them, but that's okay.
Yeah, I would literally, or yeah, I would just carry it around from house to house and be like, I'm gonna perform for you.
Yeah, working out those nerves when you were a child, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
and then I got into Tori Amos. She was played around the house a lot. And so around 11 years old, I started taking classical piano.
and that's where we are. Okay, wow. Yeah, I didn't know you were. I knew you had taught piano and you teach singing. You used to teach singing as well. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I still do teach here and there. It's it's a it's a big responsibility, to guide singers. I love to do it, but it's a lot, It's emotionally it can be intense. But yeah, I still do that occasionally.
Sum it up in like 3 words. Jessie Frye's life outside of her music.
Reading a book
Reading. Okay, sure.
or in Ireland,
Oh, okay. Is that like
dancing
ancestry
dancing with the
from?
fair dancing with the fairies where no one can find me.
Okay. Is that
I
where your
I
ancestry
am
from? You just visit there a lot?
no, no. Well, there's some ancestry, but it's just a place I've been in love with my whole life, and I'm working on spending more time there. I feel like it's home, and that's something I'm really passionate about. That I want to figure out for myself in the coming months or years. But I think by and large, I am a very, very intense, artsy fartsy person, no matter how you slice it. I mean, I can be a goofball, of course, but my brain is kind of just hardwired to like, for better or for worse, live in the drama of the creative.
You mentioned your parents being really instrumental. Would you say they were, like your biggest influence into getting into this kind of like retro, you mentioned The Cure, for example. Like, were they a big influence? Was it like a sibling maybe?
What ended up happening, to be honest with you, is that it was the collaboration with Time Cop,
Yeah.
1983. I was at a point in my career where I didn't really know where I was going. Things were kind of rough. It was 2017 at the time, and I was just a really big fan of Time Cop. I had no idea what synthwave was. I, I had no
So you were
idea.
listening to one of the best artists in synthwave at the time, even maybe.
Yeah, I was. And he got back to me and wanted to do the track. And he just gave me complete freedom. Time Cop actually gave me all the instrumentals of Night Drive to choose from.
Wow, very cool.
And he was like, which one do you want to sing on or whatever? And so I ended up, creating the melody, restructuring the song a little bit, and the lyrics for what would be Faded Memory. He comes back and says, well, this is awesome, but it doesn't fit on Night Drive. So do you want to put it out as a Jessie Frye single featuring Time Cop? And it was just crazy, like crazy good timing. I had no idea what synthwave was when the song came out, and no one cared about the song until like 8 months later. It started going kind of like organically viral in its own little way. I was finally told by an audience, we want more of this. And I was like, okay, this is exciting. This seems like the right path to go by. So that's really where the inspiration came for continuing to produce my music in the retro or synthwave style.
Hmm.
Was a I don't want to be so like cold and say it was a business decision, because I always put my art first, but it just felt right. It was obvious that me and my producer Matt needed to keep producing songs in this way. I write everything though at the piano and the guitar first.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like a-
I yeah, I'm in my castle with my piano in the rain.
Yeah, well, and like you styles. Maybe you can always revisit that. Always try other styles of music too. Like I could certainly see you doing that. But I'm at minimum excited to hear that this whole like kind of synthwave, retrowave community welcomed you.
They sure some don't.
Oh, okay. Well,
Some don't. Some really don't like strong females being in the genre. Let me tell you. I'm sure you can
I don't.
smell what I'm
Those people
stepping
don't.
in.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
but I'm sure. Oh gosh, yeah.
there's
Those
a
people
lot of that,
they don't
and
represent the genre because that's.
it's funny. It's okay.
But
I have thick skin. No, it was just a beautiful turn of events. It was a lightning strike opportunity, yeah, it changed things for me, and I'm grateful for it.
staying on the synth pop scene for just a sec, I've got to imagine there's a couple, at least one or two other, synth pop singers at the moment that you think are great and really do a good job. Do you have any you want to shout out?
I can tell you like some collaborations that I'm working on, and I can also call out Wolf Club, my friends
Hey, there
Wolf
you go.
Club. Hello, hi. We're still talking about doing this collaboration. Come on, guys. Let's go.
Wolf Club's great. I would love to hear.
Yeah, I love Wolf
How
Club.
about this? Maybe any singer, songwriter in the genre that you think is underappreciated, that you think is worth
The have you heard of the Endearing?
I do know them. Yeah, or whoever that is. Yes.
Yeah, we're working on something at that will happen at some point. We are also um I think it's going to be in the summer. And then I love everything Orax puts out.
Nice. I was just listening to his song Witches that he just put out recently. I don't know if you.
Yeah, he's really, really cool.
So I do want to take you back a little bit before we dive into Otherworld and some of your more recent stuff. Boys Club, that's a decade old now, or almost a decade. I can't remember the exact date, but
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
big album. I love that one. I had so much fun jamming to, honestly. But that felt like the last album,
Mm.
before you're kind of like coming out of the into the synthwave scene with Kiss Me in the Rain, right?
Um,
You had all this time in between. What were you feeling then a decade ago? And just if you can encapsulate it at all, how have you changed over that whole last decade? You had COVID. I mean,
wow.
gosh.
Yeah, I have to think about Boys Club is when my live band really became like solidified itself into being a family. That was really cool. We really bonded a lot during that time. The specific people I was playing with, we had a lot of incredible experiences together. And my dad died like a little bit more than a year. Well, he died in 2016. So that like drastically changed my entire universe for so many reasons. And I think like Boys Club, I wrote that from a place of like, no one's listening to me. No one's giving me the respect I deserve. I'm a
Mhm.
really strong performer. I'm a really strong songwriter. And locally, I still felt like after so many years, I was struggling to elevate to where I wanted to be. Hence the title of the EP. I feel like vocally, I was so inspired by Paramore at that time, and still am. You know, she's one of the greatest rock vocalists ever. So I was really inspired by pushing the limits of my voice in that way. And without that record, One in a Million specifically, that's what got me the Bernie Sanders gig. Yeah, I think I felt more aggressive. Like there was more of like a female like rock anger. I think Honey that came out in 2017 is like still one of my favorite things. I think that actual song is kind of really maybe what was the beginning of me getting into synth pop. It was like the first time that I did something that was really out of my comfort zone and really sexy and really pop. That song is so me. It's not even funny. Like that song is still to this day like just me.
Yeah, if you heard it from her right here, Jessie Frye, Honey, that's her in a song. I might as well ask you about the Bernie Sanders
Sure.
event. 2016.
Yeah.
Is, how did that happen? How did it feel? And are you feeling the burn again? I mean, he's doing rallies
Course.
and
I'm always a Bernie girl. Come on. Come
the burn is
on.
the
Always.
flame's still alive. Okay. Oh,
Always. Yeah,
before?
I've performed for Bernie 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Two he was present and I got to meet him and spend some time with him. And I just remember that made me feel respected finally. It kind of actually helped me turn a corner where it was like, doesn't matter if you don't like my music. I feel like I've been, trusted to do this, and my character and my personality is one that is a leader, and I felt like the Bernie opportunity um, helped elevate me and at the time.
All the different things you've learned as a front woman, all the experiences you've had with that. There's probably so much you've learned that you can take with you into, from the rock world into the synth pop, synthwave scene. And
Yeah.
there's probably some stuff you don't take with you. I'm just curious, where's the overlap line there where like, you're able to do this kind of stuff on stage, but maybe you don't do that. You do a little more of this. Like
I
how,
think that's a really cool question. I think the grit comes from being a road dog and doing toilet tours and dealing with rude venue owners and rude sound men, no matter how nice you are. Although I ended up just being able to charm all of them over time.
I could see that.
uh, Wear a really nice perfume and your sound guy will love you. That's my tip. No, in all seriousness, I think one of the things that is important is be as serious about your craft as you can, female or not, but knowing that as a female you will have to work 100 times harder to get the respect and recognition that you deserve. So I think it's really all about your attitude and your professionalism, as well as your ability to put on a really solid show. I always just made sure that that spoke for itself. I mean, look, that's such a great question from you because we do have to acknowledge that the landscape has changed. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but there is a little bit, well, a lot of concern I have for artists coming into the music industry now in 2025. Because as someone
What a
who
bleak
came up,
landscape.
yeah, I came up, through the times where like you had to go to the music venue and put your posters up
Mhm.
because then literally nobody knew you were playing. This phone didn't matter. It didn't matter. What mattered is that your show was listed in the Dallas Observer for people to read, and that your show poster was at the venue. Like, so, not to sound like a dinosaur, but I have like, seen both worlds, the
Mhm.
before and the now. And so I think it's more important now than ever to block out the noise and block out what you think you should do, and make sure that you're keeping your WHY, your why, first. Keep that first because it will show through everything else you do.
So Matt, obviously it sounds like a big part of your music development, and like the direction you went in. So, he is, it sounds like your main producer, on that side of
Sure.
it. Can you just talk about your relationship with him, how that's evolved and how that's evolved as you two are both artists, right?
Yeah. I always say that Matt is the other half of Jessie Frye.
Yeah.
He just hates attention.
It's okay.
So that's why I try to talk about him as much as I can because he deserves the recognition. I started working with Matt in 2013 on an album of mine called Obsidian. And I would say that my experience with Matt on Obsidian was so positive that for the first time I felt like I had found someone in the studio world that I could trust and explore my sound with. I hadn't really encountered that until that point in my career. And so through the years with different singles or, Boys Club, me and Matt developed a friendship, a vision of music that is complementary. We bring out the best in each other, and it's not that I won't work with someone else necessarily, but it's just so obvious to me as a creator that this is my person for my music. It is one of the most sacred, joyful things in my life. Just going into that studio and spending time creating with my friend. So he's always open-minded about my ideas, and we both embraced the synthwave direction. And so, yeah, my music wouldn't sound like what it sounds like without Matt. He helped me understand and see that I have actual like pop sensibilities about me as a songwriter.
Let's dive into Otherworld. Okay, let's go. That's the crux of this huge new
Sure.
release. Um, definitely feels to me like we talked about how freeing it was. It feels like your most mature, like sonically maybe released to date. And I think that like the fact that it's getting the attention it is on the chart board, the UK charts is evidence of that. So, kind of before we dive into like what happened with it and everything, I'm just wondering where were you kind of emotionally through Otherworld and why that title?
So the pandemic was in full swing, and I was really, really isolated and had the opportunity to go into my own fantasy land because there were no time constraints. Nobody knew when we were getting back to real life, as it were, and reignited my love for fantasy fiction, Elizabethan court music, 80s fantasy film scores, just all kinds of like things you love that have some cobwebs on them because you haven't hung out with them in a minute, like, oh, I've got the time. Let's
I like that way
see.
of putting it, hung out with them.
Yeah, and so I would mute Legend, the movie with Ridley Scott. I would mute the movie and start composing my own score
Ooh.
because I was just that bored. No.
And before you go, I've got to keep you on this note. Are you keyboard? Do you use synthesizers? Like, what do you what's your go-to?
This was, yeah. Well, Otherworld. I mean, I've done a lot of the synth like intros, like the Ice Cold song that I did, like the Halloween EP that I put out or whatever, or well, it was supposed to be Halloween EP, but it was late. But yeah, no, I've a lot of the instrumental stuff. Like in the beginning of some of my songs are my brainchild, and so yeah, so I have like different playing with different sounds on Omnisphere and things like that on my keyboard and just looking at like Elizabethan court music, like listening to a lot of that, and then like listening to a lot of Tangerine Dream and
Yeah.
just letting myself get a little weird and writing these piano. Well, I say piano, but it was synth, But yeah, anyway, just writing these instrumentals that were cinematic and ended up being the start of Devotion, Secret Heart. I'm forgetting one. Oh, and the title track, Otherworld. Yeah, and I reflected a lot on like the loss of my father and just went deep and then, had some breakup situations. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and I mean just life happening to me, right? But it was all like kind of happening at once. And my mother being my last living parent, that was a really scary feeling too.
Sure.
I lost my dad from Alzheimer's disease when I was 27, and that was debilitating. And okay, now my mom has breast cancer. Like, what is this going to be like for her? And I was her caregiver, and there was a lot going on. And look, there were some positive things too, that ended up being bad things because relationships with men. But
Sure.
but I was like, I'm just going to this album is not about falling in love. This album is about running through the chaos of the labyrinth of life, and still being able to articulate what's happening to you, even though it feels maddening. Is me, like you're getting my diary. I'm giving you my diary, and you're opening it up, and you're seeing a lot. Um, a lot more of me in a raw state that is not concerned about living up to any kind of like fantasy that an audience might have of me.
If you listen to your lyrics or look at your lyrics,
Yeah.
coming from an honest and pretty vulnerable place at times, which I think probably lots of artists, at least songwriters, maybe struggle to do. So, do you have any
Mm.
good advice for overcoming that fear of being vulnerable and being honest with your audience in the way that maybe you are with yourself behind closed doors?
Here's a rule that I'll share that I always use. If I have a lyric that I write and I ask myself, "Oh, is that weird? Is that too much?" Put it in the song.
That's when you know it's right.
That's when I know, well, because it gives that perfect amount of personalization. Do the weird thing.
Be weird, yeah.
And if you don't like it, don't guess what? No one has to hear it.
And I did pull some, not a particularly weird lyric, but I did pull actually a lyric from your album that I want to just get your take.
Sure.
So I think I'm pretty sure this is from Myth, if I'm not mistaken. It's not a myth, love exists. It's hell that feels like heaven.
Yeah.
What does that line mean to you?
I love that you pulled that. That's actually my favorite lyric on the whole record.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then I pulled a good one.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
one, I wanted to get your interpretation of that because that felt like a deeper, something deeper.
Wow.
Mm,
This song is coming from someone who's experienced like extreme narcissistic abuse
mm.
on like legitimately. I'm not throwing that word out there to be trendy. So it's it's a it's a song that is saying this is it. This is the goodbye. I have to walk away. Myth, the idea of, is love real? Will I find love? And then the depictions we see of love in fairy tales, which kind of fits into some of the themes of the record, right? So
Yeah.
when you truly love yourself, when you truly are loving on yourself, you realize who needs to go. And you still have to make sense out of what happened and what you were feeling. Don't overlove somebody, don't overgive. If it feels like there's something wrong, they're listen to that. And whether or not you want to see it at that point of going through the breakup, that person is a teacher for you.
I just feel like there's so much of what I hear in your lyrics, and now having talked to you and learned about you more, that does remind me of one of those like musicians that does have that kind of like larger than life persona, like beyond music essentially, or whatever craft they get popular in. And like a background in theater and stuff like that. It just all kind of guess essentially. But like, I know you had taken acting classes in the past. Do you still do that? And like, in a world where maybe you're able to dive into that, which I would love to see, what kind of shows, movies, theater performances, what is Jessie Frye starring in if you could choose?
Oh gosh, I would love to do more acting. I do have an acting agent. I do take acting classes. It's a tough industry. You think music is tough? Oh my gosh.
Acting is a whole nother level.
It's worse. Like, it's worse. I would say I would love to do something really dramatic and romantic.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
Romantic drama of some sort.
Yeah, those are the scenes that I do best in class. But my favorite movie is The Crow. So
The Crow? Is that what you said?
yeah. It's my favorite movie of the time.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that movie. Oh,
Yeah.
cult classic. That's a good one.
For sure.
Oh, wow. You just have this album. I don't see any tour dates on your website. What are we, when...
It's because your girl just really is into putting out music right now.
And not playing live? Is that the back half of that?
Live. It's not that I'm not going to play live. I love playing live. It's just I really am starting to listen to my internal seasons, and I really want to work on the next record.
Okay, so we're gonna have to wait a little bit.
You're gonna have to wait.
Be patient,
Sorry.
and that for listeners, that just means, hey, when you do decide to go play live, you better get your tickets, because
you better see me.
You don't know when she might be coming back. It may be a little bit. Okay, well, so we're at the very end. Gosh, I feel like I could ask you another 15 questions, but I appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and I'm just so excited to get your music in more people's ears. And speaking of which, the SynthWorld listeners, where can they go to get more fried?
Everywhere. Just anywhere that you like to be on the internet, I am there. Spotify, Instagram, my official website, jessiefrye.com. YouTube is my favorite spot, so go find me on YouTube.
Me too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm there. And thank you for asking really interesting and thought-provoking questions. Those were really fun.
Hell yeah, of course. I appreciate you appreciating them. I always try to do that, and it's great to have someone who isn't just a consummate professional in general, but is also in touch with some of their deeper parts of themselves, and is willing to express those things and let other people hear it. I think that's so freeing, and just makes this experience more fun for me. So appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, it was really, really fulfilling.
Absolutely. Well, that's it, guys. You heard it from Jessie Frye, Texas-based synthpop singer, songwriter, all-around performer. It's not just that stuff. Check out her past and what's going forward. Thanks again, Jessie, and till next time, stay retro.
Thank you.